John McMullen's back for another football season. He's brought to you by the Gallery Bar, booking games at Ocean Casino Resort. Go to the Gallery, go to Ocean, go for the win. For more, visit oceanac.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, we got a lot of things that if I would ask you, John. Bob Wankel, by the way, is riding shotgun with me for this football season on Mondays. It'll be Mike and Bob here at the Ocean. And, of course, John McMullen's back for another football season. I was just telling Bob off the air about how the people love some McMullen. They are ready for another football season of McMullen, and we're going to crank it up starting now. What's going on, Johnny?
Yeah, I think it's a love and hate thing, but I appreciate the love part.
It is a love and hate thing. You are right. But a lot of love out there. People always love hearing the insight from John. Let's get a little insight. If we were a betting man right now, would we bet that we would see anybody of substance playing on Saturday afternoon?
No, I would bet certainly nobody of substance on the offensive side. Vic's a little bit of a wild card, Vic Fangio, because he kind of does what he wants to do, and you've seen it already. And he's played some guys maybe you wouldn't have expected. So you might see a couple guys mix in there, the younger guys. Bryce Huff has been one who we mentioned is essentially learning a new position. So it wouldn't shock me if some of those guys played a little bit offensively. I would be. You could knock me over with a feather if anyone of relevance played on the offense.
What is your philosophy or takeaway on that? Is this another one of those things where it's like this is football in 2024? Because it is a little different. There are teams that are playing their starters. And are you surprised that the Eagles have kind of gone this route and just, it's funny because in the first hour we were talking about Rob Thompson yesterday, a shoe day versus spike day for some of these players. Like, they're not getting in the game. They're not playing on an off day. The Eagles essentially have given their offense a shoe day the entire preseason. Is that, hey, that's the philosophy, or is it they need to readjust their philosophy? Because they're not the only one. There are other teams that play their starters.
Yeah, a number of teams play their starters, at least a little bit. And I do think the Eagles may have played a series or two with the starters in Baltimore if the weather was a little bit better. I think that changed their thought process, even though it cleared up by game time. Game time, pretty much the field was still wet, and Nick was concerned about a clean track, so to speak. So I think that changed their philosophy, and I wonder if they played a series or two, if people would have the same narrative. Probably not. And to me, it's all right. You got 8 plays under your belt instead of 0. So I understand the old school aspect of it, and they need to. And that's how Vic kind of describes it. They don't want to take their first rep in game one. But, remember, if you want to play Jalen Hurts, you got to play the entire offensive line. And that means you got to play Lane Johnson at his age. Mekhi Becton's banged up now. Landon Dickerson's been banged up, fighting through things. You're not going to put them behind the second-team offensive line. So that by nature means you have to start the offensive line. You don't want to do that. That means you got to sit the quarterback, the receivers. You don't have great depth, so you want to keep AJ and Devontae in bubble wrap. So it's kind of by circumstance more this time. I think they have shifted a little bit, certainly on the defensive side, as I mentioned, but even the offensive side in practice, they're practicing more, less walkthroughs. They're never going to be at the top of the league when it comes to practice time, but they've certainly adjusted a little bit from that perspective, a little bit longer practices. So they have done certain things, and I probably would have threw them out there if it was a pristine day in Baltimore, and maybe that changes things. But in the third preseason game, no. Typically they wouldn't play him in that game, even though some guys are playing. I saw Cleveland the other day. They're going to play their guys. So it differs by coach and philosophy, and there's some that do it, but I can't really criticize the Eagles for that one.
John, good to talk to you. And I guess my question is just where the offense is at overall. Obviously, they're not getting the game reps. You just explained that at length. Are they, by your observation, are they ready to go? Like, are they going to hit the ground running? Is there going to be a period here where it might take 2, 3, 4 weeks into the regular season before you really see this offense be fully comfortable in Kellen Moore's offense? Like, what is your overall interpretation of where they're at right now in their preparedness?
Well, I think, I think they've been sharp pretty much the entire. It's ironic they had a bit of a step back over the weekend when Vic unleashed a bunch of blitzes from out of nowhere. They had difficulty.
Don't get people excited, John. Don't get people excited with the blitz.
Well, he's just working on it. He installed certain packages that he wanted to practice. So, but Vic's history is pretty clear. Yeah, for those people getting excited, it's going to be 22, 23%. And maybe, when they're playing Jaden Daniels, a young quarterback, maybe a little bit more versus a veteran who kind of understands how to handle it. So it'll vary from week to week. But they struggled a little bit this week. I mean, my buddy Elliot Shore-Parks is training camp statistics, Jalen Hurts, everybody takes it. It's a record. He hasn't thrown an interception through 14 practices. I don't know what record book is measuring that.
That's gaining national steam now. I see a lot of the aggregator accounts on Twitter now.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
We laugh about it every day. But, he has, and there's good and bad to that. I mean, A.J. Brown has mentioned, practice is the time you want to work on things. Maybe you want to push things. You want to maybe attempt throws that, hey, can I get away with this, and then scale it back for the regular season. So it's not necessarily all good. I have noticed they've been more focused on the underneath stuff, and there haven't been as many shots down the field. So, people think they want that. I think a lot of fans think they want that, but if you eliminate the explosive plays, I don't think they're going to be happy with that. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a good offense. It's just a matter of how good. It was a good offense last year, but, statistically, and everybody thinks it was terrible. So it's kind of like, where are your individual expectations, and will they be able to reach those expectations? But it's going to be a very good offense.
How worried should people be about the depth behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? I know there's been a lot of talk about the wide receiver depth. I mean, is this a true concern in your estimation?
Yeah, it is. I think it's a weak spot. You can't have everything. You can't replace players like A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. But if they miss a week or two with a sprained ankle or something like that, you need something better on the outside that could get you through a week with 60 or 70 snaps. And I still think that's the position that Howie Roseman is most likely to go outside the building to try to fix at cutdown day, which is next Tuesday, not tomorrow, but the Tuesday after. So I still think that's it. But I do think it's not about wide receivers 3. I think they're fine there because they can piecemeal it. So, in other words, when they're in 11 personnel, whether they want, Britton Covey, a traditional slot receiver, maybe Johnny Wilson in the red zone, maybe Paris Campbell for yards after catch, that type of thing. You could piecemeal that because that's not a high-traffic position. But if you need somebody to play a week or two and has got to play 60, 70 snaps, they don't have that guy on the roster right now.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned, that might be the place they go outside of the organization, to try to find somebody like a third wide receiver. Is there a guy that if Brown and or Smith got hurt that's on this roster that would fill that spot?
Well, that's ugly. Yeah, somebody would fill it, but it wouldn't go well. I would say Paris Campbell would be number one as long as he's healthy. You don't want to see Johnny Wilson playing 70 snaps as a rookie.
It's like a John Hightower experience.
Yeah, if you're lucky, maybe. I don't know. At least John had.
Are you saying Hightower was better than the guys they have in here, like Smith and Wilson?
Well, Anias, shouldn't even make the team. He's had a really bad summer. Now, if he makes one play against the Vikings on Saturday, he'll make the team.
So he's your Quez Watkins.
Well, no, he wishes Watkins. I think people forget.
That's not good, John. That's not good.
Well, I think people forget. So 2021, and I remember greatly because I had to talk people down from, Quez is fine as the number 2. He caught 40-something receptions. There are a lot of people fired up. There's been revisionist history. Obviously, they went out and improved to a vast degree, first with Devontae Smith and then A.J. Brown. But, he was a 6th-round pick, and as a 6th-round pick, if you make it to your 5th year and you're getting a second contract, that's a success. Anais Smith might not make it. The comparison to Anais Smith is Shelton Gibson. I know you, Mike, West Virginia guy. I mean, Shelton had a terrible training camp, and the Eagles kept him because they didn't want to cut a draft pick. They might keep Anais Smith, but he's been Shelton Gibson bad in his training camp. To the point, Johnny has played much better than Anais. But he's got speed deficiencies, and that's the only comparison. Like, at least if you have Hightower or Watkins out there, they can clear space, create space. They can take people down the field with their speed. You wouldn't have that with Johnny Wilson, so I fear that, everybody would be jumping every route. So, look, if it's Watkins, Anais Smith, Johnny Wilson, John Hightower, it's a bad situation. The Eagles need to improve.
Yeah. All right. That's a bleak one right there. John McMullen, Birds 365, weekday mornings on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. All right. What's the right guard since I've been gone? I know Becton was kind of in there, then he didn't dress for the game. I think that's a message. And then he had to leave the field. So what happens now?
Yeah, he's the starting right guard, and he's fine. It was nothing serious. It's always a concern. I mean, he plays with this big brace on his right leg, and he was limping gingerly on that leg yesterday. So there's always a concern. I think that's going to continue, but he's won the job. And Tyler Steen got injured again, so he probably came back too early from his original ankle injury. So he got hurt again. So he's out. They're a little banged up at right guard. Brett Toff had to take first-team reps there when Mekhi left practice yesterday. But Mekhi's on line to be the starter in Brazil against the Packers.
Is that a surprise to you that it happened that fast and that it's like signed, sealed, delivered?
A little bit. It's not a grand. It was pretty evident that Jeff Stoutland was enamored with it. So from that standpoint, it's not a surprise. It's a surprise from my perspective. And he's so big to play guard. He's so big. It's like, inside you got to have leverage, low pad wins. And it ain't easy for a 6'8" guy to get his pads that low. So I'm a little bit concerned to see how it plays out. But if he gets his hands on people, he's so big, he's so strong, I can see why Stoutland is enamored with it. He's always preferred bigger guards with Kelsey, who was undersized, and Juergens Cam is a little bit undersized, bigger than Kelsey, and I think he wants that same type of presence inside next to him, and he certainly has it with Landon Dickerson. If Landon's healthy, and that's another story, but and Mekhi, you got two big, powerful guys, but I just question whether he's the right type of body frame to be successful long-term at guard.
Over on the other side, it seems like late in camp here, there's been some momentum gaining for Nakobe Dean. Is this like a situation where we should buy the hype? Should we buy the positive updates coming out of NovaCare here? Or is this kind of, hey, like let's pump the brakes a little bit? What are you seeing from him right now?
No, he's been great. He's been to the point where I'm like, what are you watching, Vic? I mean, this is your best linebacker by like a million miles. And if it's a perspective of he was trying to light a fire under him, I think it worked. And then I think you say, hey, great job, Vic Fangio. But he still keeps rolling out Devin White and Zach Ballin every day. And he was actually talking about the corners, but he said, when he was talking about competition a couple of weeks ago, he said, it will become obvious. Well, it has become obvious at linebacker. In Nakobe Dean.
What changed? Like, what happened? Like, where did this all of a sudden happen? Like, the switch got flipped and Nakobe Dean was first-round pick conversation, Nakobe Dean. I know he was a third-round pick for the people who want to nitpick me, but there were people who thought he should have been a first-round pick based on his, collegiate play. Well, what has happened in that it's now like you're like, hey, he looks like a different guy?
Yeah, this is a guy people thought they were getting from Georgia. Those people who thought he should have been a first-round pick. He's shown that. Now, it's only been a week, a little bit over a week, probably 10 days. So he needs to finish strongly. He can't, there's 3 consecutive practices starting tomorrow. He can't show up Tuesday and have 3 bad practices to end this thing. He's got to keep it going. But, yeah, I didn't see it. He was the best player on the field yesterday. And I was talking with Zach Berman from PHLY yesterday, and Zach called it the best practice for Nakobe Dean since he's been here. He was dominant yesterday. And I told Zach, I thought he was better on Saturday. I thought that was a better practice. That's how good he's playing.
You buying in?
I'm in.
You just sold Bob Wankel.
I'm fired up now. Let's go.
No, but that's a position that obviously everybody has questions about, and then it just assumes it gets to the point. You know how people are, Bob. John. It's like you were drafted. There's expectations. You didn't meet them, so now you stink. You know what I mean? Like there is no like, hey, right? Exactly. But like people have expectations of you, and because look, as sports have evolved, rookies have come into the league. There was a time where a wide receiver wasn't viable into his 3rd year. Then Randy Moss came along, and then it was like, well, now you have to be good as a rookie, otherwise you stink. Is that where Nakobe Dean is like, hey, he's been in the league 2 years. He just needed a 3rd year to kind of to make it all click.
Well, I think people lose the history a little bit, and it gets revised a little bit. So year 1 was a Super Bowl year, and T.J. Edwards played great, and Tyzir White played well, and they both stayed healthy. So he never got on the field. And why are you going to play him? You're going to the Super Bowl. Your linebackers are playing well. They're healthy. You're going to keep them on the field. So he played all 17 games, all 20 games through the Super Bowl. So for those injury-prone people, played a ton of reps on special teams, which nobody cares about, but you can get hurt on special teams. So that was year 1. And when they lost the linebackers, it's interesting because Nakobe was their foundational plan at the position. Didn't really deserve it, but that was their foundational plan. And he only played 5 games. He had 2 foot injuries. The last one was a Liz Frank surgery, which is very serious. So and he just got back at the end of the spring. So the last week of the spring, he was finally cleared. And I think a lot of people said, well, he's behind Devin White. He's behind Zach Vaughn. And that has continued in training camp. But now he's healthy, 100%, feels good, confident. And now he's the guy that they thought he was last year. And it's ironic, they won't pull the trigger. So I have a conspiracy theory.
Here we go.
That these are the last 3 practices we as reporters get to see in full coming up this week. And once we're out of there and we can't see team drills, I think they're going to make the switch because I have a lot of respect for Vic Fangio. And this competition is not closed. It's Nakobe and everybody else.
Wow. So can Devin White play or no?
Yeah, what does this say about the other guys? When you say it's not close, I mean, that's great to hear about Nakobe Dean, but what do you make of the other guys in the mix then?
It's ironic. This is how I describe the Eagles linebacker room. I think they got a bunch of good backup linebackers. And to me, I think if you play Devin White and Zach Vaughn, or if you play Jeremiah Trotter and Nakobe Dean, when things started, it was going to be the same, about the same. Didn't matter who you throw out there. And Nakobe has sort of taken his game to the next step and started to look like he was the guy that he was at Georgia. And the other guys are to be good backup linebackers, which is better than the Eagles have been because they have had no depth. But if they're forced to play major snaps, yeah, people are going to be game planning for the Eagles linebackers.
So
and by the way, let me just say real quick, guys. Look, I said Jacoby's the best linebacker on this team. He's not competing with Fred Warner. He's not competing with DeMario. I'm not saying he's in their category. I'm saying in this linebacking room,
better than Kaiser White.
Yes, he's better than Kaiser. He's not as good as TJ.
Okay, well, Kaiser White was solid. I mean, TJ was really good. All right, let me get your thoughts. What is your read on the corner situation? Now Cooper's back, Mitchell, Rogers, Ringo. I would imagine they're the names that are in the mix here. Everybody else has kind of fallen off.
Yeah, it's interesting. Eventually, the Eagles want Quinyon Mitchell outside, so I don't know why they're messing around with it. But Vic keeps saying he wants his best three on the field for Green Bay, which is a very difficult offense to deal with. So I get it from that perspective, but, does Cooper DeJean have enough time to ramp up to where they're comfortable with him in the slot? If they are, then I think it's just Slay, Cooper, and Quinyon. If they're not, they're going to start Quinyon outside. So if there's only two corners on the field, which will be never against Green Bay, if there's only two, it'll be Quinyon and Slay. And then when they need a nickel, Quinyon will move inside. And then it's Rogers versus Ringo. I would say Rogers is still slightly ahead, but recently over the past 3-4 days, Ringo's making a little bit of a run at him. So I wouldn't say that one's locked down yet.
All right, couple last ones here. James Bradbury, is he on this roster?
I don't think so.
No.
I never thought so. Got a really poor game in New England. A couple missed tackles. And I think that would be the issue with him at safety. I think they just want to get to him. Now, the question is, well, Howie's known for kicking the can down the road. He might kick the can down the road till the trade deadline. I mean, ultimately, I think he wants to move him. I think he's trying to move him. And if he can move him, he will move him. But if he holds on to him, he's not cutting him for nothing. I will say that.
All right. Well, Saturday at 1. That's a weird preseason time for the Eagles. I don't remember a Saturday 1 o'clock Eagle preseason game. Now, I'm generally off a lot during Eagle preseason, but do you remember a Saturday 1 o'clock preseason?
I'm very good at erasing preseason games from my memory immediately. But no, it is rare, and I love it. The report, we love it. Yeah. We want to get out of there as quickly as possible. So it's great from our perspective. But, yeah, I do think it's great. 1 o'clock football on a Saturday. Instead of waiting for that third preseason game at night where nobody's playing, Ooh. That's just torture.
All right. Well, you can listen to that game Saturday at 1. Eagles, was it Vikings?
It's a heck of a transition right there.
Yeah, Eagles, Vikings.
Listen.
Nobody's interested, but you can listen to it on 97.3 ESPN.
Hey, listen, there are people who are diehards. I
should have talked it up. I apologize.
There are diehards out there that want to know who the third center is. Right?
Yeah, that's Dylan McMahon. It'll be interesting.
Now you really don't need to listen.
That's Brett Todd. Brett Todd plays every position. And yesterday he had to move to right guard. So typically he's been the backup center. And Dylan's a draft pick. So, Howie's kind of pigeonholed himself with these day 3 picks because he doesn't like picks. And that means he's got to keep Johnny Wilson. He doesn't like the cut picks. Johnny Wilson, Anaya Smith. Trevor Keegan's been good. No worries there. Dylan McMahon, I don't know if you want to carry him, but Howie probably will.
Jalix Hunt have any role this year?
I think there's a chance in sort of like a Bryce Huff type Jets role as just a guy who goes straight ahead. He's athletic.
After two preseason games, will Nolan Smith have a bigger role than you thought when you started camp?
Well, he's going to have a big role. The question is he going to be good in that role? And that I haven't seen enough. I'm a little bit disappointed. I thought he'd take a bigger step forward, but he's going to have to play a significant number of snaps, and I'm not sure he's ready for it.
All right, John McMullen, Birds 365, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, and back for another season of football right here on the Sports Bash. All right, John. Thanks, buddy.
All right, and I apologize. I promised to hype up the regular season game.
Thanks. We're not in a ratings period right now. So. That's John, and, of course, he'll be back all football season long here on the Sports Bash.